Well, happy Indigenous Peoples Day. I was going to get into some controversy, the things that happened up in New Mexico and all the missing Indigenous girls, that are, and women, but I decided not to get into anything controversial. Um, should be kind of a day of celebrating our um, Indigenous brothers and sisters, I think, but they've contributed so much to our nation and to the world. So instead, I just decided, well, I'm just going to show you some of the books that I've read in the last about year and a half um, that were written by Indigenous authors. So, anyway, here's the first one, called Covered with Night. Now, this book was written by Nicole Estedge. I don't know. I can't recall. It's been about a year or so since I've read this. I'm not going into. I don't prepare for these videos. I just do them. But anyway, this is such a great book. If you want to understand, this goes back to the early 1700s and shows you the repercussions of how strong in the Susquehanna Valley and the west of there into Ohio and in Pennsylvania, how powerful the Iroquois nation was, and really still is, because of how much they've given us, as Americans. Their symbol was the eagle holding 5 arrows, because that was their strength. There were 5 different tribes. I don't know if I can name them off the top of my head. The Onondaga, the Oneida, the Mohawks, the Seneca, and the Iroquois. There you go. They also took care of some other tribes that were like kicked out of North Carolina and Virginia. And the Oneidas let them stay, the Tuscaroras, I believe it was, let them stay on their land. But anyway, this is such a interesting and in a way kind of a fun book to read, but the topic isn't that much fun. It's about a murder and a court proceedings, and the neat thing about it is it gives you a really in-depth viewpoint of the Indigenous nation or Iroquois nation, Havasuna, Hava. I'm gonna mess it up, so I'm not gonna try anymore. But without getting into it too much, it's like a mystery murder thriller that takes you from the Ohio River Valley into Virginia, up into New York. There's Mohicans involved and all the other tribes around it. There's actually tribes from the far Great Lakes area, like the people that I'm related to, the Potawatomi, and the some of the other Great Lakes Indian tribes. But anyway, great book. Really a great book. And the only thing I'm going to say about this that pertains to now is that we're still covered with night. All right. Oh, this is the last book that I read that was, this is by an Indigenous author, a younger man. His name is Tommy Orange. I think there's a picture of him on the back of it. And he's, I believe he's a combo platter. I think he's Lakota and Cheyenne, one of the Cheyenne tribes, which I can't pronounce. And I'm not sure about that either because it's been a while. This was the last book I read, but I haven't read a book now for about 6 months. I've just been taking a break from it. This is about, the only thing I can compare this book to would be, it's almost as good, or it is as good, I would say that, as Reservation Dogs. It just takes place in the city of Oakland, California, and the indigenous people that live in Oakland, California. City Indians, I guess you'd call them. And it's all about the interwoven lives of all these different people and getting ready, and their perspective of them getting ready for the big powwow that happens every year in Oakland. But just excellent book. So easy to read. This guy is such a good author. I mean, the way he writes and the way his sentence structure is and all that kind of stuff. He's just amazing. I mean, this is really one of the best written books, well written books. Keeps your interest. You know, if you use it like I don't even want to tell you. Now, this book is not by a indigenous author, but try to keep that stupid halo light thing out of the. There you go. This is about the tribe. Well, Jivaro isn't how they say their name. Jivaro in Spanish means, like a man of the woods or a living rough or something like that, The Schwa, I believe, is what they call themselves. And this is like the last guy to interact with them. And this is the only tribe in the world that took heads and then shrunk them. There's plenty of headhunters all through the world. I mean, even in European tribes, they hunted heads. They were sticking heads on pikes and, England for all to see. These people did it in a lot different way, and it's described in the book how they actually made the shrunken heads. But more than that, it describes their culture, and their religion. And so I got to give even though this is not an indigenous author, I got to give this book a real thumbs up because I couldn't put this book down. It was fascinating to me, but then, I don't even think this book is in print. I found this somewhere in some book store on Amazon or eBay or someplace like that. And I don't know, I'm sure my children are not going to be interested in shrunken heads, but maybe somebody will. I don't know. I sure am. I sure was. And just because these people took heads and shrunk them doesn't mean they were bad people. And their religion was unbelievable. The way they describe the after the spirit world, which to them was, these people stayed pretty high all the time. They weren't eating ayahuasca, but they had about 5 different modes of getting high that especially the shaman were just, they never came out of it. They would just always stay in that enhanced state of mind, and a lot of them went nuts from it. But the regular folks, kind of like we are now, they made this, the women's duties every day was to continually making this batch of beer that came from this root crop, which I can't remember the name of. But in any case, it's just an unbelievably fascinating book. If anybody wanted to, I'll tell you one story out of this book, and this is like a old history, after the Spanish conquistadors, I forget if it was Pizarro, I think so, who went into, that part of South America, into Peru. And so the governor of Peru, or Cisco, I believe. Anyway, they tried to, the Incas also tried to conquer these people, and with a large force, 10,000-20,000 warriors, and couldn't do it. That's how badass these people are. So the Spanish came down there in all their glory. They came the back way, down the Andes and into the Shuar territory. So they sort of had a loose federation with these other tribes, but the other tribes kind of backed out. So it was the Shuar were left. They just decimated the Spanish, and this is with bows and arrows and blowguns, and the Spanish had gunpowder, powder, and rifles. And of course, they couldn't do much. They couldn't bring horses and cannons and stuff down into that area. They just couldn't get there with all that equipment. So in the end, they had a big gathering, and they had captured this governor who was an idiot enough to, I can see him riding down there with all his Spanish armor, dun, 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 and they grabbed him up, and so they knew what they wanted. The Spanish wanted gold. They were looking for gold. So the Shuar tied this guy down, melted down big bunch of gold, told the Spanish governor, well, you wanted this stuff way more than we did, and proceeded to pour it all in his mouth. And as the story goes, all the people, the Shuar, the Jivaro, all just started laughing and screaming and, yay, and started dancing while this guy suffered and died with this molten gold in his mouth. So you can't hold that. You can't hold them down. You can't hold that against them. You know, screw those people for invading their territory anyway. So, just one more book. This book here. This was not written by a Lakota. This was written by a Memembre. Guess you would call them Ojibwe. And they're from up in northern Minnesota, up there in the Leech Lake area. A lot of people call these same people the rice eaters, or, you know, they harvested wild rice in Leech Lake. They harvested leeches too, because the leeches were really good for fishing. This book, this guy's also a professor at USC. I don't know if he still is, but at the time. This is probably one of the best books I've ever read in my life. And I'm not going to say too much about it. I just recommend this book to every American to read. If you want to understand our indigenousness, if you want to understand our indigenous brothers and sisters and how they feel, and you want to understand their hustle in today's world, and understanding it all, this is a great book to read. He does give you a very short, kind of glanced over picture of, Turtle Island from the time of Columbus's, the Spanish arrival. But I would go to the point of saying that this book is actually important for somebody to read. I know I don't get much views and all of that, but if there's anybody out there that really, really does want to feel like they kind of know something about our own indigenous heritage, and I'm not talking about having any sort of blood quantum of, a tribal person from Turtle Island, because in a way, and he explains this, their heritage is our heritage as well. If you want to feel like a real American patriot, read this book. You will understand what it means to be a real American. And that's about all I can say about this. And that's it. My book report is over. I'm just going to say again, Happy Indigenous Day. Fuck Columbus. And all those other bloodthirsty conquistadors. And anyway, buenas noches, adios, mi amigos y mi amigas.